So we're talking about your work as co-chair of the Consortium of Tribal, State, and Federal Courts within the Access to Justice Commission, which the Access to Justice Commission and the committees and commission are part of, or consortium, sorry, are part of this public service award, the Robert M. Spire Public Service Award. And so I've spoken with Judge Martinez with the Committee on Equity and Fairness, and I've talked to, I'm going to talk to Frankie Moore, Judge Moore, about self-represented litigant committee. But I wanted to get your thoughts in video, throw it out there to social media, so they have an understanding of what the consortium does and is looking to do. And so could you give us a background on the consortium and who makes it up and what you guys do?
Sure. So the idea of the Tribal State Consortium, and I mean, this is not, we are, imitation being the sincerest form of flattery, we are trying to do what other states have done, where there are tribal populations within a state. Functionally, in a state like Nebraska, where you've got significant tribal presence, you've really got three separate sovereign court systems. You've got the federal court, you've got the state court, and then you've got the tribal courts. You know, in this case, in Nebraska's case, there's four separate tribal courts. And there are lots of times where either from a jurisdictional standpoint, the courts sort of bump into each other, or are unaware of the resources that the others have available. So the idea behind these tribal state consortiums is really just to create a forum where those different courts can talk to each other, where you know, if there's particular issues that come up, that there's a forum to resolve them. A lot of it's about relationship building. It's about getting a chance for state court judges and federal court judges to learn who the tribal people are and vice versa, so that when things happen, at least it's not some scary unknown thing. It's that, oh yeah, I know, I've met those people. I can, you know, this is what we can work with. It also it's a really good opportunity, particularly from a tribal standpoint, to be able to have state and federal stakeholders at the table to be able to talk about some of the frustrations that have come into place when you've got kind of those friction points between the different sovereign courts. So we're really, you know, we're just kind of at the point where we're moving into action areas. I think we actually have a meeting, I think on the 26th, that we're going to start putting some of the things that we've talked about into really into hopefully start to put them into fruition.
Absolutely. Well, and it's only been a couple of years really that you've had the consortium, right, as part of the Access to Justice Commission. And I guess in general, it's a fairly young group of committees and everything like that that we're recognizing here. But it's a very large group of people at the table just inside the consortium, right? I mean, there's a decent number of board members and community members, right? And we've been trying to keep it focused on, it's a court process. So we've been trying to keep it focused on having it being a court to court conversation. I think any group like that is always cognizant of mission creep and wanting to make sure that you don't kind of lose track of what you're doing. But so what we had, the plan was, and we had some out-of-state facilitators that came in to help us who've done this with other consortiums, where we went on a listening tour and went to some of the tribal communities in eastern Nebraska and basically provided an opportunity to listen to what those communities had in terms of their issues with the different courts and what the kind of things that they saw as problems. And we used that to really help inform the kind of things that we would be working on. We did eastern Nebraska, and we were planning to have a trip out to western Nebraska to get that done as well, you know, and then the world ended in March. And so that's kind of been on hold. And we were
a little caught thinking, well, do we wait to finish the listening tour before we start? And then we ended up deciding that we were going to get going, but then we are going to, it sounds like hopefully in August, we'll be able to get out to the Western Nebraska sites and get some more input on that. But we've got some action items, everything from some ideas about education to make sure that we're accessing some of the judicial education, to put an Indian law focus in with that to make that available. We're talking about what a regular roundtable of judges from the three sovereigns would look like and how that would work. And then there's a few other action items. And we're at the stage of finding volunteers, which is always the challenging part.
Well, if somebody's watching this and wants to potentially volunteer, do they reach out to you?
We are always looking for people who are willing to help. So I am if you have time and expertise to donate, I am happy to find a home for it.
That's great. Well, is there, people watching this that maybe don't have background, is there something that you want to get across to them that's really important about this, that if you're a court that's a county court, and you have tribal people coming into your court with issues that maybe partially were on tribal land, partially not, I mean what sort of kind of explanation or could you give us a scenario where this would be helpful?
Sure.
In having these open lines of communication.
Sure. So, particularly with some of the tribal courts, the tribes and the states carry concurrent civil jurisdiction, and the reasons for that I don't need to necessarily get into. But you really do put yourself in potentially a challenging circumstance where, like for example, a custody case, you would have a tribal court that has full and complete jurisdiction to issue a binding order, and a state court which has full and complete jurisdiction to issue a binding order. And the possibilities for mayhem in that circumstance are obvious. So what we've done and what we've been successful in doing in the past is using principles of comity, which is actually an international law concept of one jurisdiction giving respect to the sovereign determinations of another jurisdiction. And you have a judge-to-judge conversation between those two in terms of what makes sense for the parties involved, what makes sense for the access to justice, and for each of the two separate sovereigns to, how do we do this? How do we stage this? Is this something where one of the two sovereigns could exercise jurisdiction but defers to the other jurisdiction? And when we've done that, we've been really successful. We've had, we had a circumstance like that in South Dakota where it was a fairly contentious custody proceeding, and we were able to sequence it in such a way that made sense, at least made sense logistically for the parties to be able to really get to the bottom and address the issues that they were trying to address without. It's one of those things where if you don't have that comity relationship, you really can get lost in the shuffle in terms of you have the jurisdictional fight and then you have the courts conflicting with each other, and everything else ends up being at a standstill and nobody gets done the things that they need to get done. So that's not good for anybody. And what I'm hoping that this consortium will do is ultimately provide a forum for that, provide an easier mechanism for that, so that when and if those issues come up, particularly with someone who's not familiar with interactions with the tribal court or how tribal courts work or things like that, it gives them someplace to go. At least now you know where to ask the question, and that starts the process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's really about the people caught in the middle, right? Mm-hmm. And trying to make it a better process,
right?
A simpler, not as confusing process, not as leading to maybe some bad results because they can't get the results they want.
Right. The whole purpose of access to justice is to make sure that, that members of the state, people who live here, have easy access to the court system, have easy access to the ability to get their problems resolved. And if you have a graduate level jurisdictional dispute between a tribal court and a federal court, I mean, for someone like me, it's super fascinating and really interesting, but it's not really getting the job done in terms of actually getting people's problem solved. And if you can head things like that off the pass and find ways to create synergies between tribes and tribal courts and state court, and I know that's a horrible buzzword and I hate, but it's true. I mean, there are times where you can find ways that those two jurisdictions can work together and can actually be more effective in solving problems for each of the communities that they serve than if you're just siloing off.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think I've had a lot of discussions before this one when we're giving out the award, and we're talking to staff at the county court, both in Douglas and Suffolk County, about working together and the amazing things that they've done in the last year by working together, bringing in all the stakeholders and really taking down the egos and getting to work. And it shows success. It has in that arena, and I'm sure it will here too.
And I've been really encouraged, and it's not the experience that every state has, but I've been really encouraged that the people that I've worked with at the bar and in this area, and just in general, have been really receptive to the idea of finding that collaborative way to work. And we've as a result had some really good outcomes. So what I'm hoping to do with this consortium, what I'm hoping this consortium does in the long term is it makes it so it's not a personal relationship thing. It's not I met this person at this conference, so I know what to do. It's where you create a structure, where you create something where it's accessible to anybody. Even, you don't have to have met the right person or know the right person to call or know the guy who knows the guy who knows the guy. It's something where you create that structure in place so it's accessible to everybody.
Absolutely. And we have you for a limited time here. Anybody watching that wants to learn more about Patrick, we do have a podcast, a Bar Talk podcast episode. So we can promote the conversation that we had there a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that was a blast
at Field Day. And so there is more content on you and your background. I know that you're limited on time, so I'll put that plug in for that. Is
Great.
there any questions or anything you wanted to let people know that I haven't asked about that you haven't said yet?
I just think there are in this area of law, particularly when you've got Native American families, you've got Native American individuals, it is really important. And if you are an attorney practicing that may have questions in that area, it is important both to you and your malpractice insurance carrier that you have some awareness of how this particular area of law could affect the clients that you have. If anything from a private adoption to a guardianship to a civil case, whatever it might be. This is out there, and ignoring it's not going to help you. But there are resources that are available that can not only help get you up to speed and be able to get you the things that you need, but also can find solutions and resources for the clients and the folks that you're working with that you may not be aware of. So this is something not to ignore. We are, as part of the consortium, it's a real honor to be recognized that we're performing, that the public services being performed. We're really working hard to try to find ways in which the three sovereigns within the state can work together to make life better for the people that we all serve. So particularly if the recognition moves towards gaining more public understanding of the existence of these kind of questions and can drive people to learn more, then it's 100% worth it. And I'm very grateful on behalf of the consortium for the recognition. So thank you.